Hi, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today, I want to talk about knowing when to cut them loose. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. I'm Kale Houser. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time, your dedication, and hopefully you're getting a lot out of listening to my thoughts. This kind of random guy that you decided to listen to and take leadership advice from. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about knowing when to cut somebody loose. This is certainly not an easy thing to do. This is certainly not an enjoyable task to do, although I guess it could be in some scenarios, right, where a relationship has become so, whether it be toxic or just really bad, that it is actually a good and a freeing thing to be able to cut somebody loose in that sense. But I'm talking a little bit more of the intangible side versus a pure, firing of an employee. Because you as a leader have a special responsibility. And it goes beyond just to your employees. It goes to your organization. It goes to your future. It goes to your community, to the industry you serve, to the clients you serve, right? And it for lack of a better term, it transcends just any one individual. And this is all coming out of a recent experience I had. So there's been some things happening in the news lately, and depending on when you're listening to this, you may or may not be aware. And I won't go into the details, but I posted about it on Facebook, which is, shall we say, not a popular opinion with the very vocal side of the aisle that is I usually find myself at odds with in some form or fashion. And, I basically kind of stated my opinion on social media. And as usual, one particular person that I've known for years and years and years in various forms and fashions, although I wouldn't call us close friends by any situation, but we certainly know each other and we know each other's history and things of that nature. I can always kind of count on him to offer that counterpoint, which I greatly enjoy. I have no issues listening to different points of view, listening to how people, form these opinions, what experiences have influenced them to get them in that thought process and what they believe. And I even stated such like, hey, man, happy to discuss further of this. Just, let's keep it civil and keep our outrage and emotional discord to a low roar. And not surprisingly, he came on and jumped on this, which was totally fine. And we were actually having what I would consider a really good discussion. Certainly totally different points of view, both, on the moral level, on the practical level, like basically every way you could measure the counterbalance of this particular argument, we had opposing views on, which is absolutely okay. Because it's kind of what helps make America in general great, is we have different experiences and blah, 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 blah. You kind of get the point. But as we were going along, there came a point, as I don't know that we were necessarily trying to convince each other of our point of view to win each other over, him win me over to his side and vice versa, because I think we both know by this point we've had enough of these discussions that's really just not going to happen. But it is a worthwhile discussion to have, right? Instead of just ignoring each other, ignoring that there are these other views that exist out there, because certainly we affect each other in society. But there came a point that he made a statement that was, and I don't know how to describe it, but it struck such a fundamental chord in me of such a moral, what I would consider a moral difference, right? This isn't just a difference of opinion. This isn't just a difference of, you were raised in this town and I was raised in this town, or, whatever those circumstances are that turned us into the men that we are today. But he made this statement that it clicked in me that there is no point in this discussion anymore. By the comments that were made, and they weren't attacking, they weren't an attack on me by any stretch, nothing of that nature. It was just the words that he was using to justify and defend his position on how he felt about this particular issue, that it became a very sudden, and I don't want to say wall, but it became a very clear stopping point of, okay, we have reached this point where you are saying something that to me is so morally wrong, right, to my beliefs, that a continued discussion is completely pointless and no longer has benefit. So I essentially told him that. I said, hey, you said this, and that tells me by you saying this that this is, your interpretation of this issue. And to me, that is, and I told him, I said, to me, that is so morally wrong that I see that we've reached the end of this discussion and being able to really find any sort of common ground. Okay. And I said, hey, I appreciate you jumping in and discussing with me. Best wishes, right? And it wasn't a termination of the relationship or anything, because I wouldn't say that we have a relationship. It's more just an online, as Facebook and social media does, and Instagram, allows us that communication level without being face to face. But it got me thinking about this. Because certainly we run into this in the business world. We run into this as we have different personalities that come into our sphere of influence, whether it be, working for our company or doing business or having clients. And we can't just serve the people that are like us, right? That's just not how society works. And especially as our society is growing and we're going through these cultural changes and things of that nature, we can't hole ourselves into that. Certainly we have to have our own convictions, our own stopping points, our own, battles we're willing to take all the way. But that is not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about, basically not everyone gets along. Everyone has different opinions, different backgrounds, all that good stuff. And I'm also not talking about, within the law, right? I'm not talking about being discriminatory. I'm not talking about firing people for no cause just because, whether they look different from you or they have different backgrounds than you. I'm talking about, as you as the leader, and hopefully you've gotten the theme of overarching is, everything I talk about is contributing to building a culture in your organization, building your organizational culture, what's important to you as the owner, what's important to you as the department head, and what type of business you want to be, what type of people you want to be, how you want to serve, how you want to take your product to market. All those things is your culture, it's your identity. And you have to understand that there will be people, and whether you inherit them or you inadvertently bring them on or whatever the circumstance is, there will be people that are in disagreement with you. And it may not be overt. It may not be in your face, like, everyone here wears red shirts, right? We're the red shirt company. And somebody's like, I absolutely like red is blah, blah, right? It's some ridiculous example. But you know what I'm talking about? I'm not talking about somebody that's overtly, we all believe, again, extreme example. We all believe in, the death penalty, and you've got that one person that's like, no, the death penalty is wrong, right? You get those fundamental differences. But the point being is they may not be as, as grand as that, or as in your face, or we're not talking about capital punishment and all those kind of things. But it could be more subtle. It could be more, I don't believe in the customer is always right, or I don't believe that, I need to do everything I can do. I don't believe in training on my off hours in order to help advance my career. I think I should be paid for that. All those different things, and whatever that might look like for your industry, you got to understand that there will be people that are in disagreement with you and that culture you're gonna try to build, or that you're hopefully trying to build. And that incompatibility of those ideals and sometimes actual morals, right? We're getting to a point in our society where people are more and more moving to one side or another. There's less and less common ground that we can relate to each other with. And I don't know, whether it's a crisis of identity in our younger generation, or, our current political, whatever the case may be. And I think we kind of feel it in general as Americans. There's less and less common ground that we can find with each other. And as that happens, we're finding that incompatibility exists. Like, hey, you're a great worker, but what you do on your off time or how you interact with other people is at such odds with our company culture and what we're trying to build, that it's just not working anymore. And it could be that, your product itself, they're very much, you don't really find a vegan working at a slaughterhouse, that kind of example. You don't find somebody that's, super into saving the environment working at an oil refinery. That's just, it's incompatible, incongruent, right? But there are certainly times, and again, maybe not to that extreme, that you will find people within your organization, especially if, say we come in and help you with your business and you're starting to change that and build this new culture around the existing people you have, you may find that incompatibility starts to surface with this direction that you're trying to take your company as the leader with some of your current staff. And they're maybe not willing to go that route. They're not in agreement with the way that you're seeing that direction is going. And that's a decision that you have to make of, can there be a future with this employee, with this team member in your future of where you want to take that company? And I'm not trying to downplay the seriousness of that. I'm not trying to downplay how scary that may be to address those concerns. And this is something Liz and I have been talking about recently a lot as we're developing our framework and figuring out, trying to anticipate different scenarios that we were going to run into in talking with different businesses and business models of, as you build goals and as you build a culture and identity in a company from the leader perspective, and then you start engaging your employees and then asking them, well, what are your goals? As an employee, do you see a future with this? And inevitably, we're going to run into somebody that's like, no, I'm really just here for the paycheck. I don't see a future here. What do you do with that, right? How, as a business owner, you've not necessarily given them an ultimatum, but you're advertising that, well, hey, if you want to keep working here, this is the direction we're going, and we're only taking people that kind of align with that, and it's certainly not a, agree with everything we say or get out of here. I'm not talking about that type of culture. I'm just talking about the overarching goal and, who you serve, your business identity, that kind of thing, and how you interact with your marketplace. But ultimately, you have to choose that. You have to choose who's on your team, and it may come down to, once you identify or figure out, whether overtly or just kind of picking up on the clues, that certain people are not part of your team, that they're not part of your identity. They have no interest in being part of your culture. They may be there. They may be really good. They may be your top guy, your top salesman. Something of that nature that's a key part of your team, whether it be financially or operationally, whatever that is. And you have to decide, is the benefit of that person's contribution in the short term more important than the potential damage they could do in the long term by being so disconnected with your culture, right? Because again, they could be your top salesman and they're rocking and rolling, but as you're trying to build your company or your organization in a certain direction that may be at odds with them, certainly, they're going to not be that top salesman anymore. Their performance is going to fall down or fall off as they realize that, you're starting to go these two separate ways. And that's something that you really have to think about and decide. And again, I'm not saying to fire anybody just because they disagree with you, nothing of that nature. I'm talking about those fundamental cultural ideals. For example, like Chick-fil-A, they're known for their customer service, right? They're super nice. You get a greeting when you come in there. I have yet to have a bad experience at Chick-fil-A, right? From a customer service standpoint. Even if they happen to get my order wrong, it's like, okay, no big deal. They fix it like right away, no questions asked. They would not, of course, because they're a developed company and have been around for a long time, they don't hire jerks. It's just part of their business model. They don't hire people that are not people, okay? They don't hire, whether it be a young kid in high school working on the weekends or, a young adult, college, whatever the age may be, or even, an older senior citizen that's helping out just for something to do. They don't hire people that are mean. They don't hire people that scowl. They don't hire people that will walk past you without saying hello or anything of that nature, because that's part of their culture. And I would argue that if somehow inadvertently one of those types of people come into that culture, they don't last very long, because it's just their culture. It's what they do. It's how they treat people and how they serve their market. But it legitimately comes down to you as the leader, you as the one in charge of creating that environment in your workplace, and what you're building, and then who you decide to let influence that one way or another, because they will influence it one way or another. And you want to put people on your team that are influencing it in a positive. They're influencing it in line with you, in congruency with you and where you're wanting to go with your organization. So the chances that this particular individual that I was And I'm not saying I was arguing with them on social media. I think it was certainly a discussion. And there were a couple other people that kind of chimed in with their opinions, which is great. I love that because I do enjoy, seeing the other side of the fence. I certainly don't want to get locked in my own little, sphere and disregard other opinions and stuff because, absolutely, I don't know everything. And there's information that I don't have. And I'm certainly willing to consider it. But there's a very slim chance that this individual is listening to this podcast or would ever listen to my podcast. But, I just wanted to say that, one, I appreciate that it never got nasty because I think in the past it has gotten nasty, and I've called him out on that because hopefully they kind of understand that type of argument and that type of interaction really doesn't serve any purpose, and it just undermines your position more than anything else. But I wanted to kind of really tie that into how we interact on a business level with our people that are on our teams and things of that nature. So it's kind of a roundabout way of saying it's still you who drives the culture, no matter if you've got people that are 100% on your team, if they're 80% on your team, or if they're like 10% on your team. And you really have to figure out and balance that equation of how much they contribute and how successful and the impact of that contribution in the short term versus what that means in the long term by having somebody that's, just not part of your culture. All right. Hey, I would love to hear your opinions on this, or if you've had an example where this has happened to you, where you've had to make that decision one way or another. Maybe you didn't make the decision and you let it go too long and you're like, man, that really backfired. Something of that nature, whatever that is, shoot me a line, leave a comment. That would be awesome to discuss and kind of hear those particular stories, or even we can have you on the podcast and see what you have to say about that. I hope you enjoyed yesterday's interview with Dr. Ken from Embry-Riddle. I thought it was fascinating to get a peek into that world. If you weren't aware, Embry-Riddle is certainly one of, if not the top flight training universities, schools, formal schools in the United States. I thought it was just fascinating. So, Ken, if you're listening, thank you again for donating your time and being willing to share your message with the audience. It was pretty impressive. All right. Like I said, we also have some pretty phenomenal guests coming up in the near future. We're going to try to keep this as tactical as we can so you guys get the help and frontline stuff that you need. Shoot me a line at Kale at kalehouserleadership.com. Hey, have a fantastic afternoon no matter where you're at in the world. Bye.